this is Freddy with FreddyCanFly, and in today's video we are going to be taking a look at the tail rotor build assembly for the Tron 5.5 RC helicopter machine. Now, if you did follow within the previous video, we did complete the beautiful main rotor assembly. If you guys are just catching this video now and have the kit or are interested in figuring out more about the main rotor, please feel free to watch the video. I'll probably leave a link at the end as well. But today's segment, we're going to be taking a look at the tail. Now, the tail is a little bit unique. So this is how it comes in the kit. It's pre-assembled, but we're going to tear it apart. We're going to Loctite everything and make sure that it's safe for operation. But it's a very robust, just different looking tail, because most tails have like the tail casing, you know, around the belt or around the torque tube drive or whatnot. And this one's just got it completely exposed, and it's just got a little bit of a different look. Something I'm not really quite used to seeing, but I must say I kind of enjoy it. It's kind of badass. But so anyways, guys, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and just tear everything apart. Just step by step, you know, take your grips off, take everything apart, and I'll set everything aside. We'll itemize it, and we'll work through the manual step by step, and we will finish the assembly for this. And then we can move on to the next step. So let me get this taken apart, guys, and we will continue on from there. Okay, guys, so a couple of just real quick tips that I ran into here as I'm starting to disassemble. I think these will become equally as informative as we start to reassemble, of course. But most machines I'm used to, you know, you can remove the bottom bolt here for your tail lever, and usually that pops off, but it looks like it's an all-in-one piece. So the tail control is also the little bevel point here that does the little tail control guide, if you will. And so I wasn't able to get that off because the little bolts that go in here to keep that on, that little plastic race that they have right there, it turns out those are Loctited, so I'm going to have to heat them up to get them out because I want to apply fresh and brand new Loctite. So I'm trying to work my way around that to where I can get to a point where I can heat up stuff. But the little plastic pivot arms, I don't want to put those in a position where they can get ruined. And those have almost looks like a C-clamp design, which we'll talk about on the reassembly. But anyways, I wanted to talk to you and give you a quick tip on the removal of the tail arms. Now, this design is a little bit different. Most machines, we can take our hex drivers, right, and just counter torque them and lock it down. This one's a little bit different because it uses the lock nuts, you know, the nylon locking nuts on them. So you're going to need to have two 5.5 millimeter bolt drivers, or, you know, if you've got a different brand or whatever you have, you're going to need two because you're going to have to counter torque those to get them loose. But of course, as always, only one side comes loose, and as you can see, I got that off. And it is a little hard to remove them because, again, the plastic parts here are fixed into place, and of course there's a ball link snapped into it. So what I had to do is take my ball link pliers and kind of push on the ball as I pull on the grip, and it was able to come off. And now I'm kind of stuck in a rock and a hard place because I got to be able to get this other one off. And of course, if I put my my nut driver in, it just spins the shaft, right? So I was lucky enough, and hopefully you guys have something laying around. You don't want to score or damage, you know, the tail rotor feathering shaft at all, or at least, you know, if you don't have to. So a lot of ball link pliers have the cutouts on there, the circular cutouts, which you could use. I'm not going to. I had an Align feathering shaft tool laying around. This is for a, let's see, a 450 and a 500 size. I was lucky enough that the 450 size fits onto the tail shaft here. Basically, it's just a one-way bearing. But you can actually fit that on if you have one laying around, and that'll give you what you need to go ahead and, boom, right there, yep, loosen that side right up. And we'll pull that out. And let's see if I can show you guys how I was able to get the grip arm off. Okay, so what I basically did was, you can see here, if I pull, it starts to like rotate and stuff, but we don't want to cause any damage as we're deconstructing. That way when we reconstruct it, it turns out really good, right? So all I did was kind of put them on like this and just kind of apply that pressure as you pull outwards. Oh, no. It's kind of hard now because it's wanting to slip, so it's being a bit of a pain, but this was kind of hard to do. I will say, so far, let's see if we can get this one off here. Come on, you little bugger. This part has been kind of tricky for me. I mean, usually most tails are really easy to disassemble. So I'm going to do this off camera, guys, so I don't take up a bunch of time. But that's what I'm doing, is I'm just using my ball link pliers and trying to pull at the same time, and then they pop right off. And we'll talk more about this when we do the reassembly, but I just wanted to share my thoughts on that. These little tiny screws right here, mine were Loctited, and they're very small, so I don't want to risk rounding them out. The first one did come out, but I had to really nudge it. So I'm going to keep this one before I remove it, just to avoid the risk of you know, stripping it or anything. But I just wanted to bring that to your guys' attention. Just a little quick tip on removing and disassembling the tail. And we'll go into more depth, of course, as we reassemble. So let me get the rest of this taken apart, guys, and we'll go ahead and we'll continue on. Alrighty, guys, so I have went ahead and stripped the tail all the way down as bare as humanly possible. Take in note, and we'll go over this here in just a moment, I did have a lot of screws that were actually Loctited that I didn't think would be Loctited. And then I had some that I thought would be Loctited that weren't Loctited. So it's going to be very important that you make sure you check every single screw. So I've got everything completely removed. I kind of made little small sub-assemblies just to make sure I keep everything together. But I completely stripped down the entire tail in every way, shape, and form. I did not remove things like the C-clips or anything on the link rod arms, because of course those are like factory done. But I will be taking apart the sleeve and re-Loctiting that and everything too. So I'm going to completely redo everything just to make sure that it's safe. So heads up on that. Now if you guys want, jump over here to the screen real quick, and let's jump into the manual. So we'll be on the tail assembly here. So this is basically where my tail is sitting at now. These bearings, it looks like they are already kind of pressed in. And you'll notice that this section right here, okay, so where this bearing goes in, it's got two cutouts for the really tiny little screws. These ones here, the 1.2s. Make sure you don't go too heavy, just a little bit of Loctite, get those in. And then what you'll want to do is take your tool and come through the actual casing, and then you'll go ahead and do those 1.7s on here, the tail pitch arm support. Make sure those are fastened down. That's step one, pretty easy. This part gets a little tricky here. I'm going to recommend that you get all the sub-assemblies done on this, but these little screws right here, I don't know if it'll let me highlight it, but these ones, I'm going to wait and put those in until I get my my sliding assembly on, because if you already Loctite and sink these in, obviously you can't slide on let's see, where's it at here in the manual? Looking for it here. This part here. So this little part here, you have to sink down those screws. So wait to Loctite those for now. Okay, so you'll do this step pretty easy. Move forward. Now this one's going to call for a little bit of yellow. This one will be grease. So see how they've got everything pre-assembled here. I really love how, so you'll Loctite this because it's going to be threaded throughout here. Do not over tighten this. Just get it locked down. Make sure that your arm is going to be nice and free, and then sink on your lock nut. Now these are nylon locking nuts, so you don't need to apply additional Loctite. So everything will be fine there. And I'm just kind of going through this, guys, real quick until we can get to a good stopping point. If you guys watched the head build video, it's all going to be the same. Jump back over here to the machine. If you look at the way their tail is set up, it's actually a little bit more similar to the head build. So if you guys watched the first video series on how to do the main rotor, you'll understand how to do and grease your thrust bearings and check for the small diameter and the big diameter to make sure they're oriented right. But yeah, this has like little dampener rubbers there right inside, which is a really cool design. This end is fixed on to it. You can't take it off. So that's kind of cool. You're not going to worry about any set screws or anything like that. But make sure that you grease up the feathering shaft for the tail really well. Get that installed in. You know, get a little bit of grease on the dampening rubbers and everything. Let's jump back over here to the screen. So we'll get that done. Again, as we just talked about here, make sure you pay attention to the orientation and everything of your thrust bearings. Again, if you need help on this, just refer to the Ed Build video. Really simple, really easy design to do. One kind of hard thing with this machine is, in order to complete the tail build, you're going to need to have two 5.5 millimeter driver, nut drivers, because just like with your main rotor, instead of using a hex bolt, it uses the nylon locking nuts. So you got to be able to counter torque them like we talked about. Make sure you have those readily available. Get this assembly completed. And this one's still here. Okay, so like here's the little C-clamps. Those were already pre-installed. I didn't remove those, but I am going to take out the sleeve and recheck everything there. That'll be what our completed assembly will look like, of course. And you guys, this is all basically familiar stuff. We've seen this on almost every heli design. And I'm going to stop at this point here. So let me go back and get everything done up until this point here on the tail assembly, and then we'll come back and do a review, because I want to talk a little bit about the pinion setup and everything. So let me get that portion done real fast, guys, and we'll come back and progress on. Hey guys, just real quick, I wanted to visit with you, like I was just talking about while going over the manual, is this pivoting arm, or the tail control arm, however you want to word it. Like I said, the little set screws that are going to go in here, the little tiny silver ones, I'm going to leave those off for now and unloctited, because I need to get the rest of the assembly completed. I did Loctite the ball and everything. But the screw that goes in, I wanted to talk to you guys about. So what I did was I applied Loctite on, because like I said, this part here is going to be threaded. But what I did is I noticed, I mean, if you really wrench it down, you're going to start to lose smoothness on the radial bearings in there. So get it snug down to the point to where it bites. Give it a quick twist. And basically, you want to make sure that it's completely free of any obstructions. No notching, no binding, no anything. Then, once you have that done, again, you do not have to reapply the Loctite, because you have the lock nut on top with the nylon insert there. At this point is when you would want to go ahead and put the bolt on and go ahead and get out your little driver and then just sink that down. And that's just going to stop it from, honestly, ever really coming undone. But it is important to note, like most machines just have the one bolt there. So this is almost like a double redundancy for safety, which I really actually like. So again, just to make sure that we're on the same page, make sure that this is perfectly smooth. And then I'm going to leave out the two silver screws at this time. Those are the two screws that are going to lock onto the little wheel, okay? So I'm going to keep progressing, guys. If I have any other helpful hints or tips, I will be sure to do another segment. If not, we'll come back and look at the finished product and move on to the next step. Okay guys, so real quick here, as we start to finish up, I just wanted to show you again, I've got the completed assembly with the tail gear case, box, housing, whatever you want to call it. And then I went ahead and I've got this assembly completed here, which is going to be the thrust bearings, the tail grip arms, and then the pitch adjustment part here. Now, as you guys can see, this is a little different, because this all attaches here, and then this is going to slide into the tail casing, and then we'll pin it down with some collars and whatnot. But I always just like to address that I went ahead and greased everything up. Make sure that your linkage arms are on in the right orientation. There is a smaller diameter and a larger diameter that you want to look out for. That way you don't ruin your links. But just double check it at this time and make sure everything is nice and free. Mine is actually. It's perfectly free. And I gave the two 5.5 millimeter nuts a really good wrench down, just to make sure that I'm safe and I don't have to come back and maintenance later. But I am going to check the tail for like preload after a couple of flights, and we'll see if it loosens up at all, but I don't think that it will. Now before we finish up with this assembly here, is we're going to want to look at, jump over to the screen with me here, is we'll be looking at doing the gearing assembly. Now one important part here to note, you guys, once you purchase your kits, is they do offer additional teeth and different tail pulleys, so a 20 tooth, an 18, and a 19. Mine has got included in the kit is the 19 tooth. And just to make sure that you have the right one, jump back over to our camera, is mine does actually label, I believe it does, let me double check here. Yeah, it does. Okay, so let's see if we can get it on here. Mine actually labels 19 tooth on there, okay? So I probably should be smart and go through and count all the teeth just to make sure there's no misprintings on there, but I'm going to trust them. So we've got the 19 tooth. Jump back over to our instructions real quick. Basically the way it's going to want to go in is your tail rotor shaft will be over here on the right hand side. You're going to slide it in between the collar, the pinion, and then there's a little shim that's going to go in between the pinion and the radial bearing. And then there is on your shaft the flat spots or the engravings. So it does tell you on here, let's see, to make sure you pay attention because they're going to be oriented in a certain way. And it does say use a minimal amount of Loctite for these screws just because they're smaller and brittle. If you got to remove them to swap out pinions and whatnot, you don't want to be rounding these out. So just be a little bit less than generous, you guys, with your Loctite on these. Also, please don't forget, go ahead and get your pinion and stuff put in. Slide in your tail control rod and everything like that, or I'm sorry, your tail main shaft and everything. Get it all locked into place, but before you put on your belt pulley, make sure you insert the belt first. If you get this all put on, dang it, my highlight's not working. If you get this all put on and you forget to put the belt on, you're going to have to go ahead and remove the pulley again. And the pulley's kind of tricky to get in because you have to slide it in through these different spacers. So I'm going to get this assembly done. I'll put on my belt, put on my tail pulley. Let's come back, we'll do a final review of the tail rotor assembly. Alrighty everybody, and just as we started, we finished in the exact same spot. So this is the completed assembly with the belt on and everything. Again, I usually like to just double check everything for smoothness. A lot of people underestimate how important it is to get a perfect tail authority, the right sensitivity on gyro gains, and things like that. Your tail cannot fight or resist the movements of your servo or your fly barless control system. So, I mean, again, it shouldn't necessarily fall under its own weight, but you should not have any resistance when you move your slider or when you move your grips. If you have any, even the smallest questionable doubt that, oh, maybe that feels a little rough, reassess your setup, because it should just be butter. You know what I mean? It's silky smooth as humanly possible. But everything looks good. You know, again, I always like to pull on grips, check things like preloading. Putting the gear in, or the pinion, I guess you could say, was a little hard. And the reason why is it's got that little tiny shim that goes right after the tail pinion. It was a little tricky to get in, but the method that I used was I actually set the tail casing flat like this, and actually put the shim in first, and then just fed the shaft down through the collar and through the pinion, and it made it 1,000 times easier. But here she is, guys, fully completed. This is our tail system for the Tron 5.5. Everything looks pretty good. I like it. I think it looks really cool. So, as always, you guys, thank you so very much for watching. Follow me on the next video, and remember, Freddy can fly, so can you.